Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
What are you doing up so early?
See you.
It's when you get the schedule, David.
I never went to sleep.
Oh, really? It's very quiet this morning. I think a few people partied a little bit too hard on the first night, so they went a bit hard. It's nice and quiet.
Already had 2 breakfasts.
David Sterry, ladies and gentlemen, from real life.
Mr. Duck.
Oh, Mr. Duck, yeah.
Can I call you Larry?
Larry's fine, yeah. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. You know, when I look at my schedule, you look at your schedule, because Real Life will be playing Wednesday night at 7:15 p.m. in Studio B.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful studio. But when we get our schedule, we see it's 10 in the morning. Yeah. And I finished at 1 o'clock in the morning doing something else.
Oh, no.
I was up on the promenade, the catwalk. How you all doing? I mean, we're not even 24 hours into it, if you think about it, right? That's like a long... Oh, by the way, Cindy and Dan, thank you so much for this wonderful little gift that they gave me. So, I get gifts when I come on the cruise, and it's... My luggage ends up being bigger than when I end up throwing away clothes, because I love this stuff, you know? So David's here from Real Life. We're going to have a little fun with this. If you want to go to the bar and drink, I mean, it's okay.
The bar's open?
The bar's open. Yeah, it's a cruise, David. It's like, you know. Is this your first cruise? Have you done things like this
No,
before?
I did one last year out of Sydney, Australia. So
Oh, okay.
It was only like 2 days, but it was an indoctrination.
Was it a musical cruise, or was it just a
Yeah,
cruise?
I was performing on the cruise, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, but it was only 2 days.
Yeah.
So what do you think about 8 days?
It was sort of more 3 days, yeah. It was, ask me in 7 days. If I can still talk.
Of course. And we were talking before because, you know, David, you know, coming from Australia with Real Life, and we were talking about friends in common because the influence to this country, I'm more of an East Coast guy, but actually with Sirius XM, see, the satellite goes from Canada to Mexico, Costa Rica, the Caribbean, and Costa Rica, and it's global on the Sirius XM app, so I don't really think about geography all the time, but you met Rick Carroll, the great program director from KROQ, K-Rock in Los Angeles, a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And that's how kind of the influence spread from Australia to the West Coast. And Rick, actually, he programmed a station in Hawaii, too.
Right. Rick Carroll came out to Australia, I guess it must have been about 1983, and he was going to turn a Sydney rock radio station into kind of like a K-Rock, because K-Rock was just killing it with all the new music that was happening. And he came out to Australia, and it was just the time that Angel was like doing really well in the charts over there. And he was programming the station called Triple J, which is still kind of like a K-Rock in Australia now. And so he heard Angel while he was programming the radio station. He loved it, and he just took it back to America and put it on K-Rock. And we didn't even have a record company. So I was like, quick, manager, quick, sign them to something. So he signed us to a country and western label. And the rest is history.
And the same thing happened to us on WLIR in New York. I was the music director, and we cut a deal with it was actually a label and a record store in London called Rough Trade. So what they would do is they'd put together a box of records and they'd ship it same day from Heathrow to JFK, and my staff would meet the box. And this before Heartland, I think, even came out. We got a lot of test pressings in those days, but it didn't had like a white label, and they'd like magic marker, like Send Me Angel, or Send Me an Angel, or Real Life. And so we played it, we dropped the needle on it, we're like, holy crap, you know, it's like, that's how it starts, that's how it begins before social media. I mean, it's just, that's the viral of it. And we had a show called Off the Boat, which was an import show on Sunday nights, and we played the song, and the phones lit up, and the rest is history.
Do you know the reason you would have got that in your parcel? Send an Angel in the parcel?
So how did that happen?
Well, because the English were the only people that didn't have it as a hit, so they were just trying to get rid of that copy and send it to
No, they sent me really good stuff though.
That's the only place. They were anti-Australia at the time. They were just sort of looking, they think of us as convicts, you know. Oh, we were.
I know they say Australia's the land of criminals, but I
We are. Here's your wallet.
In my room, in the safe. But it's interesting too. You know, when you're a DJ, and you're playing a song, and our job is to be really like storytellers. It's not about us, it's about you, and we move it along. It's actually more about you than it's about us, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have a listenership, and we wouldn't have an audience, and we'd just be talking to an empty room. So I was on the air a week ago, and I've never told this story on the air before, and it's kind of my Send Me an Angel story, and I wasn't going to tell it, but I figured, you don't mind, do you?
No.
We have an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm Irish, it's a gift of gab, you know. Yeah, so my mom is turning 90 this year. And believe it or not, she drives still, and she speaks at her church and does the whole, lectern thing. And I was having dinner with her, my wife Suzanne is here, and she goes, so you hear what happened to Evelyn? And I'm like, I'm trying to even think of who Evelyn is, but it's the other woman that does the 11:15 mass, so she does 10 o'clock. I said, what happened? She goes, well, Evelyn's husband, they were just sitting, in the living room watching, they weren't even watching TV, they were reading a book, and all of a sudden the husband goes, I don't feel well. And, well, what's wrong? He goes, I don't know, it's just, He goes, oh, by the way, who's those two guys at the front door dressed in white tuxedos? And she goes, there's no one at the front door dressed in white tuxedos. No, there's two amazing tuxedos in white, two guys at the front door. She goes, honey, there's nobody there. He goes, I don't feel good. I'm going to the bathroom. And she hears the thud. And he passed away. And I was convinced at that point that those were two angels waiting to send him to heaven. But my line was, send me an angel, but you're not yet. So that's my Send Me an Angel story to kind of go into the song.
That's been one of the most rewarding parts of this whole journey, is when somebody tells me a story like that. I have stories of I was in Texas a few years back, and a woman came up to me and said, I want to thank you for naming my daughter, and brought me a drink. And she was about to become a single mother. Her waters broke, and she'd gotten in the car, heading to the hospital. She knew she was having a daughter, and the daughter was going to be called Madonna. But she crashed the car into the tree, and while she was waiting for the rescue, Send Me an Angel came on the radio. So there's a girl in Texas called Angel. There's a lot of stories like that that just make it all worthwhile. They're fantastic.
Well, what's the most unique one you've heard?
It's actually a difficult, long one, and it's about a murder.
It's all right, we got an hour. Right? You like a good murder at 10 o'clock in the morning?
A guy who made a terrible mistake with a gun ended up in jail and served his sentence for something he was kind of goaded into. And he used to have a crystal set radio, and he the only way he could hear the music he wanted was standing on a toilet in his prison cell, holding his radio up to get a signal, and waiting to hear Send Me an Angel. So I have like stories like that one and that one. You kind of think about it and go, wow, have I really got something to do with that? But music gives people hope, I guess, in all sorts of situations. So
that's great. When you started,
down vibe, wasn't it?
Yeah, no.
And I don't believe that the name Duck is Irish.
No, it's not. Well, I'm from Long Island, so there's a lot of ducks.
That's nowhere near Ireland.
Yeah, but actually it's named after Donald the Duck Dunn, who is the bass player for Booker T and MGs, and also for the Blues Brothers. He was the guy that smoked the pipe when he played the bass. So when I first started radio, everyone on the air was like 10 years older than me. I was like a kid. I grew up very quickly, but they used to call me Duck Dunn on the air, and I hated it. And at the time on KROQ in Los Angeles was Jed the Fish and Richard Blade. As you know, Richard's on in the afternoon on Sirius XM. I'm on in the morning, and I just celebrated my 21st anniversary on Sirius XM. And when I was in LIR, I didn't like the Duck Dunn thing, so I flipped it, modeled after Jed, and then it stuck. The thing is, when I got to Sirius XM, I asked if I could go back to my real name, which is Larry Dunn, or Larry the Duck Dunn. They said, no, they don't know you by Larry the Duck. They only know you as the Duck. So the Duck stuck, and the rest is history. So, but I guess it's different. And then in those days, it was all about ratings. Today, we don't care, like on Sirius, we don't care about ratings. But in those days, people remembered nicknames. They didn't remember real names, like Paco. Or Dusty Street or something like that.
But all the DJs, you always had your favourite too, and it was a character like that, whether it was you or Richard Blade or Jed the Fish, all those people. You had your favourites, and you always waited for their show. And they'd always have something to tell you new about your music. We're there for the music, first and foremost, but it was good to have someone to sort of guide you through some of the new stuff that was happening.
Well, that was our job. Our job was to introduce and then just let the song speak for itself. And we were more in a song mentality than a band mentality. But when you started, there was a band in England at the time called Wire. But you started as a band called The Wires, right?
Yeah.
And then you started traveling with this little drum kit that was called Gloria.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how you started.
It was a little machine. It was that big. It was called a Doctor Rhythm. A boss Doctor Rhythm is what it actually was. And yeah, we were called Wires because we had so many of the things, and we were always tripping over them in rehearsals. Because we had these new things, synthesizers and bass pedal synthesizers, and there was just wires everywhere. So, but yeah, we soon realised we couldn't call ourselves The Wires.
And then you became, as a private life, you evolved to that, right?
Yeah. But we called ourselves A Private Life for a little while, and then we were from Melbourne. There's a band in Sydney. We're about to do our first trip to Sydney to play, and the Sydney band said, "You can't come here, we will sue you." So we had to find something else. So we just thought, everyone was used to the life part of our name, so we just said, "Okay, Real Life, we'll do that." Yeah. I don't love it.
Well, I mean,
It's not Led Zeppelin. We have a band in Melbourne called People with Chairs Up Their Noses. And I thought, I want somewhere between that and Led Zeppelin.
People with
Chairs up their noses. And Duran thought that was so funny that without ever seeing or hearing them, they said, "That's who we want to open for us. We want them supporting us." I don't know whether it ever happened, but yeah.
People with something else up their noses too during the 80s, right?
Really?
I don't know.
No,
don't ask me.
Gee, wow.
Well, so you mentioned the Australian music scene, and you talk about the bands that you were with, and I mentioned that last year we had Steve Kirby in the church here.
Kilby.
I'm sorry, Kilby. Sorry,
Telling
it's
you
10 in the
shit.
morning, right?
I'm going to say, Steve, remember that guy Larry? The Irish guy?
The Irish guy, who makes mistakes a lot. So we had Steve up here, and they had just released a new album called The Hypnagogue. And you told me a great story about Steve. The thing about The Hypnagogue, which is kind of a concept album, we did a quasi-interview right here, and we did a listening party, because the album was brand new, and I hadn't heard it, so it was hard for me to speak to it. It was a concept album. But I Googled the word The Hypnagogue, and I couldn't find it. He goes, "Oh, he made it up." Yeah, he made it up. And it's apparently that state of mind before you fall asleep, where all the creativity flows before you have a drink. Still have never heard that before, but you told a story about how he told a story and how you got famous because of Steve in the Australian press.
Yeah. The church have always been very cool, very aloof and very sort of enigmatic. And many years ago in the early 80s, when the church were just taking off, and we were starting, a lot of other Australian bands you would have heard of were starting to, NXS, Icehouse. Steve did an interview where he claimed that he was the greatest songwriter in Australia. And it was on the front page of the main magazine, like our version of Rolling Stone. And of course, he was drunk. We didn't know that. And so no other musician would really go near them. We'd sort of, "Oh, well, he's the best songwriter in Australia." That's, and look at the way they don't talk to anyone. And they have this certain walk, they pulse about. And a few years ago, we have a Hall of Fame in Australia called the ARIA Hall of Fame, and the church were inducted, and everyone had a lot of respect, of course, but we expected the church just to be aloof. Well, Steve came on, and he was, he might have been drunk again, and he just opened up, and he had wonderful stories, and he was very generous about all the other Australian bands that he loved so much, and everyone else was just falling off their chair. Like, this is Steve Kilby, he's just lost 30 years of cool, has just gone down the drain. And in fact, that's what the other guitar player said, Marty Wilson Piper. He just walked in and said, "There goes 30 years of aloof and cool."
And what about the other bands? Because when you started, I guess you were opening for some of the other bands too, like NXS.
That was what you wanted to do. Was we'd had our own rented crowd, which was about 30 people that we could drag into a pub and play to. And you were trying to open for bands that were perhaps already having some success, so you could impress their manager or the record company, or their fans and drag some of them back to your show. So that's what we had to do. And we opened for the church, who didn't talk to us, of course. Midnight Oil, Rose Tattoo, NXS, Ice House. Opening for Midnight Oil is a pretty scary thing because their entire audience was drunk, angry young men. And here's me in a pair of plastic pants with leg warmers and a little bow tie thing. And we're in this really rough part of town, and there was the first time I'd seen barriers in front of a stage, you know, and all these angry men start going, you know, and I love Midnight Oil, by the way. They're going, oils, get off! You know, they're saying, F off, you know, oils. And we had to play, we had to do a 40-minute set. And I got a bit cheeky and went, you know, we're called Real Life, and we're playing, you know, next week at this pub in town, come and see us. Boo, boo, get off. And we went back to the dressing room, and Gary Morris, who was Midnight Oil's manager, said, "Boys, you're so cheeky, I've never seen anyone do that to a Midnight Oil crowd. Get back out there and do another 40 minutes. So we walked out, and we had a residency at this hotel that I've been telling them about next week. It was called Macy's. And next week at Macy's, there's like at least 10 of these guys that were at the front of Oil, you know, screaming that they were going to kill us. And I said, you know, guys, you wanted to kill us last week, what's going on? And he said, well, we secretly liked you because you have to do that at Oil, you have to tell the band support band to get out, you know. And we heard that girls came to see you as well. It was. Then we had to open for Rose Tattoo, and there's nothing more scary than seeing about 100 bikers, angry bikers, with their arms crossed, in dead silence for your whole set, you know. So we became brave very quickly because we were terrified half the time.
Wow. Well, Peter Garrett's probably the tallest lead singer you ever meet too, right?
That was funny. I remember walking out on the stage just before we went on, and they had the microphone set up for him, and it was like just way up there. He's very tall.
Yeah, very tall. And the thing too, it's hard to open for bands. I remember that famous story about when Roger Daltrey from The Who, when they first started, they were opening for like, I don't know, Little Richard or something like that, and then people would boo and get off the stage, and that's where he started to swing the microphone. And what he did was he swung it and hit the guy in the head and pulled it back. And that's how the beginning of that started. So, but if you did that with a biker, forget about it. It would have been a riot.
No, yeah. They were exciting times too. We had this, there was a whole of unheard of bands. There weren't any other main events around. People went to small pubs to see a new band that they'd only just heard of, or radio stations would play demo tapes. And we would borrow Men at Work's van to get all our equipment around to the pubs, and there was a great camaraderie between most of us. You know, there was NXS and Men at Work and Ice House and all those bands. It was a great time, really beautiful time.
Yeah, in the late 70s, it was interesting because NXS started, I guess they were called Flowers.
No.
Was that
Flowers was Ice House? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, NXS they called themselves they have another name. It might have just been the brothers, the Farris brothers.
Oh, the Farris brothers. NXS was Farris. So Ice House
was Flowers.
Was Flowers.
Yeah.
Sorry, 10 o'clock in the morning. But that's how the genocide, that whole Australian music scene started around 76, 77, that time period.
Oh, there had been a previous music scene that was far more kind of rock and roll, somewhere based between I guess American rock and roll mostly, and none of those people ever had a hit record outside of Australia. It took, I think the first band to sort of break out of Australia was Little River Band, I think, and then possibly they're on the ship Air Supply, and probably then Men at Work. Yeah. Then the gates were open.
Well, everything opened up at that time too. Like music became a lot more global.
Yeah, and Australia's such a long way from everywhere. And that's I think an interesting thing about, we were looking for a sound that seemed to be like an Australian sound. I don't know whether we really found it, but we had stuff from England on the radio and stuff from America on the radio. So it was a mixture of everything coming through. I have a really good story. When I was little, I had a transistor radio, and I used to love to listen to it. And every Sunday night, there was some guy in America who would come on the radio and do This Is American Top 40, and his name was Casey Kasem. Yeah. And I was like just a little kid, and I had my transistor radio. And lo and behold, like about 10, 15 years after that, one night on American Top 40, hi, it's like Casey Kasem, and I have the song from real life. So I was like, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that must have been a great feeling to hear that
amazing.
out of that mouth.
Yes, absolutely. And the great thing is, when you were on American Top 40, they cut you the vinyl of the whole Top 40 was cut onto the show was cut onto records, and you got it. So.
We talk about influences and global, and we talk about when I guess '09-ish. I guess you put out something amazing, but the '80s tech, the synth covers that you did.
Yeah.
And there was one band, and I forgot they were Australian, My Sex.
Oh yeah.
So I think about like a band like Kraftwerk, and how the Tentacles. Here's a German band, right? And they influenced you. Yeah. You hear it in My Sex.
I saw them just before Christmas, and they were as fantastic as ever.
And that has to be an influence.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it's interesting you say My Sex, because they had a song called Computer Games that had, it was the first time I heard that kind of ding on the synthesizer, you know, that played evenly in regular notes in perfect time and with a rhythm. And I thought, oh, that is so good. Then the guitar comes in and it's quite heavy, and I thought, yeah, this is good. And we used to support them a lot too, and they were great guys. They used to sort of take us under their wing a little bit. Sadly, there's only one of them left, and this is the keyboard player. But
and it also took 6 nominees to get them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
yeah, well, they're originally from New Zealand as well. But we sort of treat New Zealanders as part of our own. Yeah.
But the influences that you went through, and also you covered like Depeche Mode and Tears of Fear, a lot of bands like that. It's ingrained in all of us. Even you too, during the Innocence and Experience tour, there was a part of that tour where you see Bono's room where he grew up in Dublin, and he's got a Kraftwerk poster on the wall. Yeah. So the tentacles of a lot of the influences of bands that were like 50 years ago, before our time.
I've been reading a lot of a book about a lot of the punk era in London. I've been reading a book by a woman by the name of. She was in the Splits, and what's her name? There you go, can't even think of it. But this was about the time when all those bands were forming, the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and they were. Well, I was surprised that they were all influenced by Yes. That there was this before that there was bands like Yes or Pink Floyd who could play these impossible things. And a lot of us just was never going to be able to play guitar like that, or bass, or drums like that. But we still wanted to express ourselves. And I see that in a lot of those old bands. You go, what? You're into Yes as well? And I keep thinking I better hide that. And so everyone grows up with music, and that's where it comes from. You listen to your parents' music, and then your big brothers or whatever is on the radio, and you start writing. Well, it comes out of what you've heard, what you've listened to.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because that period they called it prog rock or progressive rock, where you had Yes and Pink Floyd and Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but the synthesizers were developing even more sophisticated at that point.
I've been seeing some YouTube footage of the Beatles with a Moog synthesizer, and the story was that they sort of all loved it. George particularly loved the synth and used it. It's on Abbey Road. It's the Abbey Road album. Paul loved it, but he tended to overuse it a bit. And John Lennon just loved the thing called white noise, which is like, and he just kept turning it up and making more and more noise and drove everybody else nuts with white noise.
Well, there's another influence, the Beatles. It's funny you mentioned about George and Paul. So we had Wang Chung on the boat. And as I got to know them, I didn't realize that the bass in dancehall days is Paul McCartney's bass, because the bass player for Wang Chung is left-handed. Oh, really? Lost his bass. It's funny, Paul McCartney lost his bass, got stolen in 1964, and they just resurrected, right?
Yeah.
And so that they he lengthened his bass for that song, which I didn't know. So it's like one of those little trivia factoids.
I didn't know that. I spent a lot of time on the road with Nick Richards from Wang Chung, and I never heard that one. So.
Nick Richards too, who influenced.
Sorry, not Nick Richards. Nick Feldman.
Right, but Nick Richards was a producer in London. He became that band Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah, well, he owned the studio actually. He owned a studio where Duran recorded a lot of stuff. Frankie Goes to Hollywood recorded there. A whole lot of people recorded there. Yeah.
And we were talking before off mic about the process of recording a song. So you mentioned that early punk period and the Sex Pistols. We got Marky Ramone on the boat, and it's interesting that first album from the Ramones. It was well known that it took only a week to record. It only cost $7,000 to make it, which is kind of mind-bending for an album of that magnitude. But in your time, you were kind of breaking down the cost of what it was like for you to go in the studio. So, like the daily cost, and then the add-ons.
Yeah, well, it was about, to go into a major studio, it was about $3,000 a day, whether you were in Australia it was $3,000, in London it was £3,000, and for that you had what was called lockout. So you had the studio for the whole time, but then there's the cost of the engineer, the tape operator. The tape was very expensive, and you only got about 15 minutes on a 12-inch tape. And so, yeah, it was very expensive. And you also had to rent, if you wanted a reverb on your music as well, there was a brand new reverb machine. You had to sort of pay an extra charge for that, or some other sound that you wanted, yeah.
And the technology was evolving so quickly. We went through that short period of DAT, digital audio tape.
Yeah.
They look like the little mini cassette.
Yeah.
And now it's just files, right, on the computer. That's really what you're doing.
It's very. I didn't think about it too much. I've known people who have argued about analog and digital, and I've got a Moog synthesizer at home, and I've got a Roland digital synth, and they both sound fantastic. So.
Well, at the end of the day, a great song is a great song is a great song.
Yeah.
How it's recorded.
Yeah, if you're putting some new music on, going, no, is that analog or is that digital? The song's no good, obviously.
Right.
You didn't polish your hooks.
But the song evolves too. Even a song like 70 Angel reminds you, it's reminiscent of...
It didn't evolve, it was written in 5 minutes.
But did it take different versions, like for example, like Take On Me from A-ha, right? That didn't start the way that we know it now. It took one guy to go in the studio like on a Sunday, and then, because it bombed when it came out. But then when it got remixed, and the version we all know today was the one that became a massive hit.
Yeah, a remix was often a big thing, but no, Angel didn't change. It was, I'll tell you the story about it. We were going on a long journey to play a gig at a place called Phillip Island one summer night, and Richard, our keyboard player, who was driving the car, we're in his beat-up old Ford going to a gig, and he handed me a tape. I was sitting in the back, and he said, "Listen to this, David," and I put it on my little Walkman thing, and I heard and I thought, we've been trying to write something that was a single for a long time, and as soon as I heard that, I thought, uh-oh, he's done it, and now it's on me, what am I going to do? I've got this fantastic piece of music, and I think on the way down to the show, the title popped into my head. The first thing for me is, once I've got a title, I'm nearly finished. It's got to work out what happens in between. So we wrote that. I took it back to the guys about. I went home the next day and wrote the lyrics in about seriously 20 minutes or something, and recorded a rough on my little 4-track thing, and took it to the band. And Richard didn't really like it. He wasn't that happy with it. He said, "Why have you always got to be so negative with the lyrics?" Wow, someone who has anxiety and depression is always a little bit that way. But anyway, we played it to... We had a manager called Glenn Wheatley who managed Little River Band. He passed away a couple of years ago with COVID. Anyway, Glenn loved it, sent us into a demo studio with our sound engineer, recorded it, and the demo was fantastic. And then a week later, so this is like in the space of 1 week, and then a week later we were booked into a studio to record the proper version with a producer. And the funny thing was, as you'll find out if you come to see us, I'm not much of a guitar player. And we went into the demo studio, and I didn't know what the chords, the song were or anything, not that it would matter. And we said, okay, they said, okay, well, let's put a solo on here somewhere. And I was sitting out in the studio. Hadn't been in the studio much before, sitting on my guitar amp with my headphones half on, saying, okay, I'm just trying to get a sound here and just play the track at me. And they did. And I went, or something. And I said, okay, now tell me what the chords are and I have a proper go. And they sort of, from the control room window, they look at me going, nah, come in here. And there's this fabulous solo that I played accidentally. Back in the day, nowadays, you would have just taken that sample that and put it onto the new tape. But no, we had to start all over again in the proper studio and do it again. And I spent days and days and days trying to play the solo like I played on the demo tape, but I never got it quite right. So every time I play it, I can never stop thinking about that going, you idiot.
Well, you've had an interesting road from the days that you actually answered a newspaper ad in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's
where
right.
you started.
Yeah. A friend of mine came knocking on my door very, very early one morning, and I was a poor taxi driver at the time. And said, David, you've got to ring this number, ring this number, you know. It's a synthesizer player looking for a guitar player. And I went, nah. And eventually I rang the number and it was Richard, and then he hung up the phone and told his friend, I've just found the guitar player we're looking for. So, you know, a happy accident. And I still see the guy that came around and knocked on my door and said, you have to ring this number. And I thank him profusely.
Before we turn it to you, because we're going to have you ask some questions, I know that the band has been on and off for a number of years, but you came back in the year 2020, right? I guess during
we never really went away. It was just, you know, there was nothing on the plate for us. Yeah.
But 2020 was kind of that year that you decided, and actually it was a COVID year too, which was kind of interesting because
and Melbourne had the longest lockdown of all the world, actually.
Of all the cities in Australia.
Of all the whole world, I mean. Actually, we had 150 something days or something. We had curfew. We were only allowed to go 5 kilometres. You know.
Yeah, we actually, this is my 4th 80s cruise, but the first one was in 2020. We were the last ship. We were the last ship. We came in right on the 15th of March, and everyone knows that the anniversary of COVID, for whatever reason, is the 16th of March. And then at 8 in the morning, I couldn't run off to the taxi because we didn't know if we were going to be quarantined, right? It was like one of those things that, like, you didn't know.
Yeah, no, you had no idea. We were in Germany. I just got back from Germany, not knowing whether I'd get home either. Yeah.
So what do you do now, like in your spare time? Like when you're not here, you know, like...
I make music.
There you go.
I'm a musician, sort of.
And he's a great musician, so give him a hand, please. Now, questions from the audience, and I will try my best to... Yes, the hand over there.
Hi.
Oh yeah.
Hi.
I'd just like to ask, where were you when you first heard yourself on the radio? But you kind of answered that with Case of Basis.
No, it wasn't when I heard it first from America. I was driving in a car. I was driving in my car, and it was a beat-up old car held together by chewing gum. And I pulled up the lights, and I had the radio on. And all of a sudden, I came on, and a beautiful sports car with a beautiful woman driving it pulled up beside me, and she had the radio on too. And I'm sort of beeping my horn, going, hey, over here. And the lights changed, and she sped off.
And the other question I had, how did your song get in the movie Rat?
I don't know. I'm sorry. It's been in a lot of movies. It's been in Rad. It was in The Wizard. It was in Teen Wolf 2. It's been in at least half a dozen movies and TV shows. They just keep, signing it. There's a request that it suits the era of a film that's being made or something, and that's how it happens. It's really never to do with me. I get a letter from my publishing company saying, "Can we license Angel for this movie?" So yeah, I haven't even seen Red.
Should he see it?
And some people see.
I only saw it recently, and from what I remember, it was your song was played during the prom high school scene, and they dance on bikes.
That's right. Yeah, I think I've seen that scene on YouTube, but not the whole movie.
So that's why it stands out extra.
Yeah.
They used your song as music.
It's amazing we ever had a song in a movie. I never imagined that when I was being thrown out of school.
But a prom theme is pretty cool, isn't it?
It's great, yeah. Oh look, it's having people like your music is just fantastic. Even just someone who says I like your song is enough, you know.
Well, having gone to high school myself, and here in Chicago, Color My World is a prom theme. I'd rather have Send Me an Angel. Question, yes, over here.
Hi, just want to let you know I'm really digging Everything Explodes.
Ah.
And are we going to maybe hear that on the cruise?
No. Oh, no, you are. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
And is like Sirens ever going to get reissued? I've been trying to find a new copy of that on CD.
No, it was a limited edition. So, yeah.
Well, kick ass, man. So
Yeah.
You going 16 minutes on a song was outstanding.
Thank you. It's a funny song too.
It's awesome, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's my favourite piece of work ever, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
See why.
thank you.
All right. Awesome.
Don't ask, don't get. You get the song.
Yeah.
So Wednesday, 7:15, Studio B.
I'm totally
Yeah.
gonna be there, dude.
Okay. Thank you, dude. Yes, sir.
I have a question. What is David? Thank you for being here. First of all,
I'm happy
so
to be here.
excited to hear you. My question is, what is on the cover of Heartland? What is that? It was like something. Like,
that was just a prop. That was
Yeah.
we were in a sort of a sand mine desert thing just outside of Sydney, and we just had a whole lot of props that came from some theatrical place, and we didn't have. We were looking for a cover idea. We were actually making the video for a song called Open Hearted, and in the next sand dune, Duran was set up making a video for something else. Something I can't remember what they were making, but we were both in the sand dunes, and the photographer was just taking photos all day, and he took a picture of that prop, whatever it was, and we didn't want our ugly mugs on the front cover, and so a good decision, I think. So yeah, we don't even know what it is, but it's a theatrical prop, and it looks great. I love that photo. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, right there, sir.
I love rediscovering your music, and I sense music from like Rush and New Order and Depeche Mode. Like, I'm curious who did you really like when you were starting to listen?
I guess all of the above. They were all bands like Depeche and everything were just starting when we were starting as well. In fact, we shared a record company in Germany, and I actually had lunch with Martin Gore. But it was that I was excited by the new sounds. You know, there was a new. You know, I love guitars. I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan and a big Pink Floyd fan and a Yes fan. But these synthesizer things, you know, and just the bass and the bottom end, those things had anything I heard that had some synth on. Gary Newman, for sure. You know, hearing Cars and Our Friends Electric. It was the sound that I was in love with more than anything else. And of course, I guess the melody and the romanticism of it, the new romance, I guess we called it. There was a sense of romance. Oh, Vienna. There's some great footage I've seen on YouTube lately of Midge Ure just messing around in the studio, and they were recording Lament, I think it is, and he's playing a beautiful Moog synthesizer, and he's saying, "Oh, these things, there's new stuff coming out. These things will be just discarded soon." That Moog synthesizer he was playing would be worth thousands and thousands of dollars now. But I just love that sound, and the mixture of guitars, romantic vocals. It was beautiful. I think a lot of the sadness of some of that music was beautiful too. When you go to see Kraftwerk, who I saw just before Christmas, people are pretty much weeping with the beauty, the majesty of the music. You think, well, they're playing synthesizers. How can that be? And I reckon, Kraftwerk would just about blow Led Zeppelin off the stage with the beauty of the music.
It's great. He had lunch with Martin Gore.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that first EP he put out on his own.
You know where it was? It was in Hansa Studio, which made it even more special. Hansa Studios in Berlin. It's still there, and it was in a wasteland area of Kreuzberg back in the 80s. And Bowie recorded there. Bowie recorded Heroes there. And we were on the same record company as Depeche, so our record company guy said, "Look, Martin Gore's in town, would you like to have lunch downstairs?" So it was Richard and myself and a record company guy, and Martin. And I guess we were just a little bit much in awe. He was lovely, friendly guy. And we were mostly talking music and production and things like that. But it was in Hans' studio, so that was great.
We have time for 2 more questions, so yes, right there.
I'm going to steal Ziva's normal question. Is when you guys first got paid?
Paid? I'm still waiting. I've been told the check's in the mail for the last 40 years.
That's what was going to be, is what did you, when you first got paid, what did you guys spend that on? Or was it given to one person and they had to split it?
No. What happened was, when we signed our publishing contract, this is way before the record came out, I bought a mattress and a leather jacket. I really needed the mattress. I had this mattress that was like, just had towels holding it together, propping it up, So yeah, a mattress was my prized possession.
And then the leather jacket.
And then the leather jacket, yeah.
Breaking down the money, that's an interesting question. I like that. Do you know how much you two got paid to do the Spirit?
No.
So I found out that Jim Dolan guaranteed the band $10 million up front, and then every performance for 40 shows was $4 million per show. 170. 40 times 4 plus 10. Yeah. Wow. They needed a mattress too. And a leather jacket. Thank you for breaking the money down. That's an issue. I never think about breaking the money down. One last question.
No, they're all bored.
No, they're at the bar. Yes, sir.
Will we ever get another proper American point?
It's just such a hard thing to do, basically, because the rest of, whoever's standing behind me now is real life, and that's just the reality of a lot of people. As much as I'd love to bring a band over, it's just way too expensive for the sort of fees we can command. Also, the visa is a nightmare. It's like months and thousands of dollars. And the interesting thing is, it takes months to get it. You're never sure you're going to get your visa until about the day before you go, and it's so stressful, But I would love to. I'd seriously love to. I love being on the road. I love playing. I love just the whole thing is fantastic. I love hotels, living in hotels. Ships aren't too bad.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned about the visa thing, because last night we announced next year's lineup, right? So it was exactly a year ago. Last night we announced you being here. So at that point, you had to get your ducks in a row to get the visa thing going.
No, I'm not playing in America.
We're in international waters. That's why we have a casino, right?
That's why I said yes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Good ice house next time.
Yeah.
The previous time I was here was 2019 with Lost 80s Live, and Wang Chung were on, and also Nick Richards, we mentioned before.
From Boys Room.
Yeah. We all got together, and when we got there, we went, when did your visa come through? It was like the day before, but we'd applied for it like 4 months ahead, and you've got to, you can't just state on one sheet, hey, I'm signed to an American record company, I'm with an American publishing company, I've had this hit, I'm in this movie. You can put it on one page. Oh no, they need 50 pages of bullshit. And lucky my mum kept all these clippings of magazines that I was in. And so you print up this like 50 pages, and they go, is that all? Can't you get more than that, And you've got to have an interview to prove you're worthy of the American public, of course. And then they say, well, we may give you the visa, we may not give us $6,500 as well. And so you do all that, and then if I wanted to come back, you think, okay, all that, they've got me on record, they know everything about me. You think if you came back next year, it'd be, okay, we'll just update your visa. No, you're going to go through the whole 50 pages, you've got to do the interview and that. So it's really hard. It's not that easy to just come over here.
Can I comment really quick?
Sure.
That Lost AV show, I came to see you.
I remember.
Rob Juarez, the
Juarez,
producer.
yeah. Which show was that again?
That's in Los Angeles.
LA, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a great
he
theater.
promised me that you would be there. And so, so I'm still mad at Rob Juarez, the producer of that Los Angeles Live.
I'm mad at him too.
5 years later, you remember
Yeah.
from the audience. That's great.
Yeah, he was sitting, 2 rows back on that right side.
Well, it's good to have Los Angeles in the house. Thank you for being here, too. So David's going to be playing Real Life. That'll be this Wednesday night, 7:15 p.m. in Studio B.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Sterry from Real Life. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today, too. Thank you, David.